Case file. The third knock. Some sounds are harmless. The soft click of cooling pipes, a window frame settling, rain making small honest impacts against glass. And then there are sounds that feel like a choice. 3 knocks. Not loud, not impatient. Almost considerate. The kind of knock that says, "I know you're there." That's what people can't shake. Not the noise, the intention behind it. Because rain doesn't knock. People do. This file is built from the same report repeated across different buildings, different towns, different years. The details change. The feeling does not. 3 knocks. A pause that feels measured, and the sense that whatever did it was listening for what you do next. Case 1. The door. It starts in a flat that feels too quiet for the hour. Not peaceful quiet. The sort that makes you aware of your own breathing. Someone is alone. They're doing something ordinary. Washing up, scrolling, trying to keep the night from feeling too long. Then the door answers for the hallway. Knock, knock, knock. The first thought is practical. Wrong door, neighbour, delivery. But the rhythm doesn't match any of those. It's careful, controlled. The pauses are the same length as if whoever is outside isn't guessing. They're following a script. They go to the peephole. Nothing. No movement at the far end. No shadow cutting across the floor. No shoulder turning away. No lift. No door down the hall clicking shut. The corridor isn't just empty. It's still. They open the door anyway because people do that when they're trying to prove to themselves they're fine. The hallway is there in front of them, lit exactly as it always is. A place that should contain signs of life. It doesn't. No footsteps, no breathing, no shift of weight, just air that feels slightly colder than the air behind them. They close the door. They listen. A few minutes pass. Long enough to convince yourself it was nothing. Then it happens again. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same light pressure, the same refusal to become loud. And that's when it changes from odd to frightening. Because now it feels like the sound is confirming something. That you stayed, that you're still inside. And then comes the detail people struggle to describe without sounding mad. The strip of light under the door changes. Not a dramatic blackout, not a flicker like a bulb dying. A shift. As if something moved through the corridor and briefly interrupted the light, low to the ground, close enough that the gap under the door darkened for half a second. Then it returned. The hallway light was still on. Everything was still normal. But the light had been touched. And with that comes the other physical detail. A cold patch. Not the whole room, not a draft. A specific pocket of cold that seems to sit just inside the doorway, as if the air there belongs to the corridor now. People step back from it without deciding to. They don't stand in that patch. They go around it like you go around a puddle you can't quite see. What it does. People don't describe panic. They describe something worse: control. They lower their voice without meaning to. They stop making normal noise. They move like the floor might answer back. They don't stand in the middle of the room anymore. They drift to edges as if being centered makes them easier to find. And they do something strangely specific. They stop using the peephole, because the last time they looked, they felt, looked back at. Case 2. The corridor confirms it. The next day, someone tests the story out loud. A neighbor in the lift. A message in a group chat. A half joke with a tight mouth. Did anyone else hear knocking? The reply isn't laughter. It's a pause. One neighbor says, yes, 3 times. Another says, I thought it was my door. Someone else admits they opened it. They saw no one, and they still couldn't sleep. Then a detail turns up that makes the skin go tight. 2 people heard it at the same time, from different directions. Not because sound travelled, because sound behaved as if it wasn't coming from a single place. As if the building was delivering it. And once that idea takes hold, everything in the corridor looks staged. Doors too still, light too flat, silence too clean. Someone mentions the light under their door. How it dipped briefly, as if something passed. Another mentions the cold. Not the flat was cold. A cold patch near the threshold that wasn't there before. And that's when people stop laughing about pipes. Ordinary explanations and why they fail here. Yes, buildings make noises. Pipes knock. Doors shift. Air pressure moves things. But those sounds are messy. They don't have manners. They don't wait between impacts like someone counting. The accounts in this file insist on one detail. It sounded like a hand that didn't want to be heard. That's the difference. A bang says accident. A knock says permission. 3 knocks says I'm giving you one more chance. And the moment the light under the door changes, it stops being only sound. It becomes presence. A note on 3. People fixate on the number, and it's not superstition. It's pattern recognition. 1 can be anything. 2 can still be coincidence. 3 becomes deliberate. A signature, a rhythm you can't unhear. And once you've counted it, you start counting everything. Seconds between sounds, the time between knocks, the distance between your bed and the door, the number of steps to the light switch. That's how it spreads, not through the hallway, through you. Case 3. The knock that moves. This is the version people whisper because it makes them sound ridiculous until you hear the way they say it. In this case, the knocking doesn't stay at the door. It starts there. Then it appears again, lower, like the wall beside the door. Then again, closer, not louder, as if it's trying different surfaces, different entry points. Not a ghost story, a practical threat. as if someone is outside the room mapping it by sound. And the light under the door answers it. It dips. It returns. It dips again. Not long enough to see a shadow. Long enough to know something crossed. The cold patch spreads by a few inches almost politely, as if it's being allowed in a little at a time. People do what you'd expect. They freeze. They record. They press their ear to a wall like that will turn fear into information. And when they finally open the door, there's nothing. The corridor looks normal, empty, innocent, almost proud of itself, as if it knows how to look harmless. Closing. Most of the time, there will be an explanation. A neighbour, a draft, a pipe, a door settling at the wrong moment. But this file isn't about proving anything. It's about the part that remains even when you think you've solved it. Because what people remember isn't the sound, it's the moment after. The pause where you realize the knocking was careful. And then the light under the door changes, just enough to suggest something moved. And then the cold appears, just enough to make you step back. Careful knocking, altered light, localized cold. 3 small details that make the corridor feel less like a corridor and more like a boundary. Maybe it was only the building settling. But the feeling doesn't settle with it. And once you've heard 3 knocks like that, you start listening for the 4th. Case file closed.